My hot take of 2020 is that Cam Newton will win the MVP. I'm serious. I'm not even kidding. But I'll get into it in a bit. Right now, it is July 18th, 2020. I hear in this quarantine. I'm James Sims. And with this episode of The Elite, I'm going to talk about the guy who I think is going to the MVP, Cam Shootin' Newton, who is currently, he is a 31-year-old quarterback who currently plays for the New England Patriots. He's won an MVP in a previous season, and if you're not I feel like if you're a football fan, you're definitely aware of Cam Newton. You definitely respect the quarterback he's been in past seasons, whether it be his junior year at Auburn or the year that the Panthers went 15-1 and lost in the Super Bowl and Super Bowl 50 actually. No, I mean, you definitely respect Cam Newton's game, and I personally think that after he was told to his face that he's not the quarterback he once was, and given a full quarantine and summer to get back into his shape and let him heal up, I think Cam Newton's gonna come back and be Superman for this year, and I think the Patriots might have made their best possible move in the last decade by picking up Cam Newton. So if you're unaware of Cam Newton, he is, like I said, 31. He stands at about 6'5". He's 245 pounds. And if you see him play, like he's incredibly agile. He's really fast. He's really strong. He's really smart. He's probably one of the more intelligent quarterbacks I've ever seen. He uses his body. He In the past couple of years, he's been getting kind of bad calls thrown his way because, I mean, he is a really big quarterback and he does kind of talk a lot of trash when he scores. But I'm more of a, like, if you don't want him to celebrate, keep him at the end zone kind of guy. But Cam Newton scores a lot, he celebrates, and refs start to look the other way when Cam starts to get cheap shots like that. I mean, I still feel as though that's the case, but I'll really kind of get into it as I discuss his career. So, of course, big guy, 6'5", 245, coming out of Atlanta. He originally gets recruited to play at Florida, where he was going to be the backup to Tim Tebow. And as Urban Meyer was there, the plan was to keep Cam Newton until Tim Tebow went to the league, and then they're gonna use Cam Newton afterwards. But Cam Newton would then he got kicked out of Florida, went to a junior college, and then he went to Auburn. And as a redshirt junior, Cam Newton had probably one of the most impressive runs at Auburn that anyone's ever seen. That Auburn team ended up beating four ranked opponents in the regular season, two of which were sixth ranked LSU, and they were at number 11 Alabama, and they won that game. They went on to beat 18th ranked South Carolina in the SEC championship, and they beat number 2 Oregon in the national title game. And Cam Newton, in his 1 year of college football, put together in a season, he played 14 games that season. He played all 14 games. He was going on to complete 66% of his passes, to throw for 2,854 yards with 30 touchdowns and 7 interceptions. And on the ground, he ran for 1,473 yards and 20 touchdowns on the ground. So we're talking about a combined 4,300 yards and 30 touchdowns next to 7 interceptions thrown. And he had a receiving touchdown. That's 51 total touchdowns on the season for Cam Newton, as that Auburn team went through every single team that the college football season threw at them, and Cam Newton naturally won the Heisman. He won the Maxwell Award, the Walter Camp Award. He was a BCS champion for the second time, because he won it at Florida and he won it at Auburn. He was the AP College Football Player of the Year, consensus All-American. Of course, he was naturally first team All-SEC. But at college, he had done enough in that one season that would get him drafted first overall in the 2011 draft by the Carolina Panthers, who, of course, had the number 1 pick after going 2-14 the previous season. So, I mean, with that's when the Cam Newton era started for Carolina, and since then, they've really turned their team around for the better. His first season there in 2011, he went on to start all 16 of the games, finishing with a total 4,000 yards passing, 21 touchdowns through the air, 17 interceptions. He would then go on to rush for another 700 yards and 14 touchdowns on the ground. So that's 35 touchdowns responsible for in his first season, in his rookie season for the Carolina Panthers in 2011. That year they would finish 6-10, third in the NFC South. But Cam Newton, with all that production, was named the Rookie of the Year. And he was also named a Pro Bowler. So within his last 2 seasons, up until that point, but by his age 23 season, he'd already been a college champion at 2 different schools, one of which he was the starting quarterback and won the Heisman in the 1 year of being there. And his second year, he went to a failing team that only won 2 games the year before in a tough conference with the Saints and the Atlanta Falcons in 2011, and still finished with 35 total touchdowns on the season. And I mean, at that point, he went, and after winning Rookie of the Year and the Heisman in back-to-back seasons, you can't not say Cam Newton is someone who, when he's playing at his best, can be the best player in football. His next year, in his age 23 season, Cam would start all 16 of the games he played. He finished with 3,869 yards through the air, 19 touchdowns, 12 interceptions through the air, and on the ground, he would finish with 741 yards, 8 touchdowns. This year, the Panthers would finish 7-9, and they would miss the playoffs. But that year, Luke Kuechly was named the Defensive Rookie of the Year, and then after that, the Panthers had been a feared team on the offense and defense, because on the offense they had Cam Newton running that offense, and on defense you had arguably the best linebacker of the 2010s running that defense as well. So that's what you get with the Carolina Panthers. And after this season, the Panthers picked everything up and started being a playoff team, or at least close to being in the playoffs, which is much better than what they were doing before. They have a quarterback now. So in his age 24 season, 2013, Cam Newton went on to start all 16 games. He would finish throwing for 3,300 yards, 24 touchdowns, 13 interceptions, and also on the ground running for an additional 585 yards, 6 touchdowns, as the Panthers finished with a 12-2 record. This is his 3rd season starting for Carolina. He would go on to earn a Pro Bowl appearance yet again, and within his last 4 years, he's shown that he can be not only the best college football player and be the one person added to a team like Auburn and win the championship. He showed that in his first 3 years as an NFL player, he was one of the league's most elite quarterbacks, and he definitely had what it takes, along with Luke Kuechly on the defense. He definitely had a lot of help, but he had what it took to be the quarterback to lead a team from being 2-14 to being a playoff team in his 3 years there. So, I mean, at that point, Cam Newton is most definitely elite. And at that point, it's indisputable. Like, you can't disrespect what Cam Newton has done in that time. As I said, the Panthers would finish 12-4 that season. They would end up losing to the 49ers in the first round, the year that Colin Kaepernick was in town. And Luke Kuechly would go on winning Defensive Player of the Year, Ron Rivera Coach of the Year. But the Panthers were slowly building up into a really, really, really good team. So, going on to 2014, the Panthers Cam Newton would end up starting 14 of the games that he played, and he finished with a 5-8-1 record as a quarterback. He was injured at the end, but he ended up throwing for 30,127 yards, 18 touchdowns. On the ground, he contributed 539 yards and 5 touchdowns. The Panthers would end up going 7-8-1 as they won the other 2 games that Cam Newton didn't play. The Panthers would end up finishing the season 7-8-1, winning the NFC South this year in a wild season. They ended up beating the Cardinals in the wild card, and they lost to the Seahawks in the divisional round. And in 2015, Cam Newton brought probably his best season of football, which makes me still believe in him to this day. So that season he started all 16 of the games that he played. The Panthers had a 15-1 record. He finished with 3,837 passing yards, 35 touchdowns on the season, 10 interceptions, and on the ground, he was able to run for 636 yards and 10 additional touchdowns. He had 45 total touchdowns in an NFL season, and 10 of them were on the ground. And at that point, Cam Newton had established himself not only as one of the best, like, two dual threat quarterbacks in NFL history. At that point, there was a legitimate argument that Cam Newton was the best and most unstoppable quarterback in football at the time. As many people see Patrick Mahomes, many people saw Cam Newton the same way. Of course, Cam Newton's not Patrick Mahomes, but at that point, that's what they were looking like. And even with that, the Panthers went on 15-1. They went on to beat the Seahawks in the first round. They beat the Cardinals in the second, and they ended up losing 24-10 in Super Bowl 50 to the Broncos. But Cam Newton had gotten all the way to the championship. He led that team, and especially after everyone had told him that he wouldn't make it as a dual threat player, immediately he brought a 2-14 team to being a 12-4 team that won the NFC South in his third year. And in his fifth year, that team almost went undefeated, if not for the Atlanta Falcons beating them in week 17. That team won their first 15. Cam Newton most definitely earned that MVP. He was named the Offensive Player of the Year, and at that point, the Panthers were basically living nice. At that point, that was before Cam Newton really kind of caught the injury bug, and him being 6'5" and running the ball for 600 yards, 700 yards, and 7-8 touchdowns every season, that's when it catches up to him. And over the next couple of seasons, you see him be plagued by injury, but he'd still do his best to get the job done for the Panthers. In his age 27 season in 2016, he would start 14 of the 15 games he played for the Panthers. He put up a 6-8 record in his stead. He would finish with 3,500 yards passed, with 19 touchdowns, 14 interceptions, and he would add 359 yards and 5 touchdowns on the ground. So in total that's 24 touchdowns on the season. That's good, but the Panthers will still finish last in the NFC South. Moving on to the next season, the next season the Panthers would end up making the playoffs. They would go 11-5 as Cam Newton started all 16 of the games. He would throw for 3,300 yards with 22 touchdowns and 16 interceptions. And on the ground, he would run for 700 yards and 6 touchdowns. He wasn't named a Pro Bowler. He wasn't been named a Pro Bowler since the year he was named the MVP. And in the other years, the next year they went 6-8 as he only threw for 3,400. He had 24 touchdowns for the year, 13 interceptions, and the Panthers finished 6-8, or they finished 7-9 because they finished the season without him. And the next year the Panthers would go and finish 5-11 while Cam Newton started only 2 of the games. So my takeaway with Cam Newton's career. And but before I get to that one stat that I didn't mention for Cam Newton, in the first 8 seasons of his career in which he started, every single one of them, he has thrown double-digit interceptions in every single season. His first season he threw for 21 touchdowns and 17 interceptions. His second year he threw for 19 touchdowns and 12 interceptions. His third year, when he was a Pro Bowler for the second time, he threw for 24 touchdowns and 13 interceptions. His fourth year he threw for 18 and 12. His fifth year when he was the MVP, he threw for 35 touchdowns and 10 interceptions. The year after, we went 19-14. The next year, 22-16. In his last full season as a starter, where he played for 14 of the games, he threw for 24 touchdowns. He threw 13 interceptions in 14 games. That's a lot of interceptions, and it makes a lot of sense to why they would move on from a player like Cam, and they continue to drop him at the end of that season. And right now, Cam Newton was recently picked up by the New England Patriots. They signed him for a $6 million 1-year contract or something like that now that Tom Brady's gone, and they're looking for the next one in line. Cam Newton in that Patriots system, I think it sounds really well. I think Cam Newton is definitely a guy he's been told time and time again that he's not what he once was. And for this guy, he seems really angry. He's been working out like crazy. He's ready to come back. And if his past injuries aren't a problem right now, I imagine that Cam Newton can most definitely return to being the most unstoppable offensive player in all of football, just like he was at Auburn, just like he was when the Panthers were 15-0 through 15 16 games in a season. Like, that happens. Cam Newton is still that guy to me. I think that once the Patriots start cooking and he plays with Bill Belichick as a coach, I think Bill Belichick is good enough to bring the elite back out of Cam. And I wouldn't be surprised if Cam Newton won the MVP. If he does, you heard it here first on July 18th, 2020. That's all I have to say about how good Cam Newton is. And if you're looking at Cam Newton's career, watching it back, as of right now, he's a 31-year-old quarterback. And quarterbacks tend to last long. And he can still throw the football. He has an MVP under his belt. Even going back to college, he has 2 national championships with 2 different teams. And even though he didn't play on the other one, he was still good enough he was still Tim Tebow's backup. And Tim Tebow was the best college football quarterback, some would argue, ever. And Cam Newton was Tim Tebow's backup. He went to go play his own season at Auburn and basically won the championship for them. Yeah, there was a great team, but Cam Newton helped them win that championship. Goes to the pros, and there's a Rookie of the Year the very next year. 3 years later, he's a Pro Bowler yet again and leads the Panthers to having a winning record after being 2-14. 2 years later, he's the best player in the NFL and wins the MVP, and they lose the Super Bowl. I mean, what more can you say about this guy? Now he's gonna change pace. He's gonna go to the Patriots with Bill Belichick's system. I think he'll be unstoppable. And thank you for listening to all 16 minutes of my Cam Newton segment. And if you ever get a second to watch him, he'll probably wear number 1 on the New England Patriots. And when you watch him, just really ask yourself, how many players on the defense is he bigger than? He's probably bigger than everyone on the other side of the ball, except for maybe their defensive tackles and defensive ends. If he's bigger than your team's linebacker, I'd be scared to play against him. I'm not gonna lie. And with that said, I've said my piece. Peace out.